I think it started in the probably early 60s. They began to, IFAJ began to make overtures to AAE coming in. And the editor of the Minnesota Extension Service, Paul Johnson, who became the editor of Prairie Farmer, was in Europe and went to one of their meetings. And I remember coming back, he came back, and I was somewhere with him. I heard him talking about it. He said, yeah, we probably should get involved in this organization, which had been going about 25 years at that time. And then it happened that during my presidency, 1966 to 67, they had the first World Congress in Montreal, Canada. And the Canadian Federation asked Jim Thompson and Norm Reber, who was editor of Pennsylvania Farmer and the treasurer of AAEA, and me to go up the winter before and preview what they were going to do, which we did, and it looked like a good show. They tied it in with the World Fair, which was in Montreal that year. So we went back, and I can't remember the exact month we were up there, but we had a number of AAEA members who went to the meeting in Canada. And then right the next morning after the Congress was over, there was a little kind of a rump meeting of some of the officers of IFAJ, and they invited Don Barron, who was with the Ag Magazine in Winnipeg, and me, he was president, I was president, to sit in on this session. And the main purpose of the session was to decide if they were going to have another World Congress. And either Don or I made the motion, and the other seconded that we hold a second World Congress. And that's kind of how the World Congresses got started. I think originally we were supposed to be every 4 years, but they ended up in 5 years. Every 5 years, and they'd opened it up to all press of control countries like Russia as well. And that's what led to the Second World Congress in France, and then the third one that I was general chairman of here in the U.S. And it kind of got the beginning of how we got involved in it.
Why was it called a World Congress?
Because they opened it up to the control press.
Oh.
The regular meetings were member associations, and I think we had 18 member countries at the time the U.S. went in. We were one of the larger ones. We had 4 delegates based on number of members you had, and you paid dues accordingly. But we just rotated between those member countries who were free press or uncontrolled press. And then they'd let, Russia was the main one, but other countries would come in. Mm-hmm. And when the Russians would come, the first Congress or two, there'd always be somebody in a black jacket who you knew wasn't an ag editor. He was along to keep track of it. We'd go every year, Matty and I, and we had 4 delegates, as I said, and we had a hard time getting enough delegates to go because we didn't have much of a stipend. We had $400 that was allowed to us. Wow. And I would divide it with whoever I could get. And it could he be a member or an associate member who happened to be on a trip somewhere, we'd get him to come, and usually we'd end up with 4 delegates during the actual delegate session. Sometimes we wouldn't, but those were kind of catch as catch can those first years. As far as AAEA went, we had a policy at Webb, or Webb had a policy before I was ever there, that any members on the farmer staff could become members of AAEA. They didn't delegate 1 or 2 or 3 people. So Barry Akers, the editor, two ahead of me, was a member. Chick Kircher was a member, I was a member, and maybe 1 or 2 others. But I could go to AAEA member meetings early on, I think in the early 50s that I got started at. Then when we started getting into IFAJ and I became a delegate, I would get a certain amount of money, maybe $400 or $500 from Webb, that kind of matched what AAEA, but the rest of it was coming out of my pocket, which kind of had a bearing later on. But it was, I had great experience. I really enjoyed both AAEA and IFAJ. It was a great broadening experience for me. Well, we've been in France, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway,
Japan.
Sweden, Japan. I represented, I was a senior vice president towards the end, and represented the association in New Zealand and Australia. Well, personally, both organizations really broadened my specter of what's involved and what the job entails and what you need. I got to know a lot of people I wouldn't have known, both within the U.S. and outside the U.S. We, as I say, got a lot of interesting travel, and actually, I kind of had three different periods involved in IFAJ. One was the first Congress, then the second I led the delegation to the second World Congress in Paris, or in France, down in Cannes, and we had a delegation of about 40-some from the U.S. who went, and we toured 4 or 5 countries on that tour. That we had a real good tour. And at one of the meetings somewhere in Europe, some of the people who were on the board, who were officers of the board, asked me if the U.S. would hold the Third World Congress. And I said, well, I'll take it up to the board and see what they say about it. And I said, what do you want to see in the U.S.? And they said, we want to see New York City, Niagara Falls, San Francisco, and the Corn Belt. I left. I said I'd have to charter airplanes to do that, and we can't do it. But I came back to the board and reported on all this, and we decided that, yeah, we would do it. And they had asked us to do it in 1975. So we went back to IFAJ and said, we'll do it under one condition, that we switch the year to 1976, which is the bicentennial for the U.S. And my main reason was not only would the country be showing itself to a lot of foreigners during that bicentennial year, but we could maybe get some money out of USDA, which we did. Not a lot, but we got a little bit of money. So then the next thing was, they said, okay, how about you being general chairman? And I didn't see this one coming at all. But I talked to my publisher and to the staff, and we decided, yeah, I probably had more experience and a little broader experience than anybody else. So I took that on. Towards the end, took off about 3 or 4 months, where my secretary and I didn't do anything except IFAJ. And Tom Doty, the managing editor, ran the paper, handled everything else, and did a good job of it. And then we held our Congress on the first 9 days in July in 1976. And we picked that time up on purpose over the 4th of July. And we had an excellent Congress. They talked about it for years. Everything went real well. And one of the highlights of it was that on the 4th of July, we had about 225 people from 23 or 4 countries here. And on the 4th of July, we had every couple or every individual with a farm family in Iowa. we held this at Iowa because they had a new continuity center at Ames, which could handle three languages, and they added Spanish, which became the fourth language, and they could do it without laying wire all around behind the desk. And so we were down there, and we were in Iowa, and Monty Sisker, I asked him to line up farm families to pick up all these foreign visitors on the 4th of July, and they were in there picking them up early in the morning and went all over the state, and some of them didn't get in until 10 o'clock after they'd had the fireworks and the parade. And it was great, you know, they stayed with the family, they talked with the family, and had a great time. And it was an excellent Congress. Both AAEA and IFAJA have made great progress since I retired. And one of the greatest things that both organizations are doing is giving young people experience early on, because we're more and more into a one world situation now, and with international trading, and any ag journalist has got to be well informed all worldwide.
All right.
One of the most prized award recognitions that I have is the Lifetime Membership Achievement Award, which I got in 2007. And the other one that's really one of the top ones that I got was the Reuben Brigham Award, which is the Extension Information Service gave it, and that's their top award, and I got that in 1982. But I got a lot of recognition. I really enjoyed my time, and I hope I helped mold it a little bit. When I was president, there was a Farm Homemakers Association, what was a Home Editors Association. And Maddie was a home editor of the Farmer. That's where we met, so she was on the Farmer staff. And she was a member of the Farm Home Editors Association. And I remember I made a talk. I went to one of their meetings and gave a talk about something. I don't know what it was. They were meeting in Chicago about the same time, I guess, that we were. And I got I don't know where it is, but somewhere I've got a nice painting that they gave me as a result of it. But the Farm Home Editors Association folded up a few years later. But more and more women were coming into agriculture, and have been for some time, and they're doing a great job. And it's too bad to see the Home Editors Association fold up, but magazines were, as times got lean along in the 70s and 80s, in their periods that they were dropping, some were dropping their home departments. The Farmer didn't do it, and some of the other Midwest magazines didn't do it, but they were getting to be fewer and fewer of them. Well, they're still doing the same job, and that's to try to help farmers do a better job farming. That's what we really were. We're just people that helped farmers through the written word, or through the published word, or through the vocal word. And I see today probably one of the biggest problems that we're going to have is actually a continuation of the problem we've had in the past, except it's accelerating, and that's the methods of communication are getting faster and faster. And we still got the same job to do, and that's supply information to farmers to help them do a better job. And the ones that are around are more sophisticated, so editors who are doing this job need to be pretty well informed, and they've got to find a way to deliver that information in the best package they can get for the user, so that the farmer gets it when as quick as he can get it, and in the form that he wants to use it. And I remember when TV came in, there was some question about, well, is there any future for farm magazines or newspapers? Well, they're still around, they're still doing a good job. It's still a written word. You can read it in bed at night or any other time you want to. You don't have to be in front of a TV at a certain time. And I think it's going to be the same way in the future, but it's going to be a bigger challenge probably than ever was. Just one last thing, I guess. Canada had that meeting back in 1967, and then they never had another meeting until 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know why they didn't, but Mattie and I went back kind of as seniors, and just kind of stood around and watched, and I was impressed by how far they've progressed, both organizations, how well they're doing, particularly with their young people and their internships and the rest of it. And I was a little surprised that 2 or 3 people came up to me, and again, they were women editors, and wanted to do an interview with me on things that had changed, which was kind of fun.